Today to wonder and ask, why do you oppose this bill?
Yeah, so this bill, it's actually...
Oh, that would make sense.
Sorry. So House Bill 1312, it's actually 9 sections long. We're all focused on Section 2 of the bill, which I think is the most egregious part, which talks about the custody issue. So in a custody dispute situation, if if a child is confused about their gender, what it directs the courts to do is to say that the custody belongs with the parent who affirms the gender identity delusions of the child, and the parent who doesn't affirm that is committing child abuse, and they will lose custody because of that. And that's just Section 2 of the bill. If you go to Section 4, it's about name changes. A child can go to school and change their name without any parental involvement, and the parents will never even know about it. And then the child comes home. So little Johnny goes to school, says, I want to be called Sally. It's called Sally at school. And then when they go home, they're still Johnny, and the parent has no idea about it. And I actually ran an amendment when it was on the floor to say, you have to at least have parental consent on this. Like, the parents need to be involved, and the Democrats killed that. Then you move on to Section 5. It talks about dress codes, that any child of any biological sex can wear whatever clothes they want, and there's no parental consent in that as well. And then it moves on to like Section 8, where it talks about businesses. If you have a business and you misgender someone in your business, you can then be sued for discrimination under the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, which we've seen with Jack Phillips, the baker, the cake baker. That was about gay marriage. This is about transgender identities for children. And so the entire bill is bad. And so there's a lot of reasons to oppose it, but I think Section 2, the custody dispute, is the biggest one.
I wanted to clarify
What?
one thing.
Oh, sure.
So that also applies to private schools too, right? Because
Yes.
they are open to the public, even though they're considered
Yeah,
private schools.
so in the bill it says places of public accommodation, which in the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act is basically anywhere except your home. So it's public schools, private businesses, everywhere.
Where do you fall on this being a massive infringement on the First Amendment?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. So first off, the business aspect, that if you misgender someone, you're discriminating against them. That's First Amendment. But you also have the First Amendment to treat your child how you feel like they should be treated. So if your child comes home and they have these gender identity delusions and they're a biological boy saying they're a girl, how are you able to treat them if you can't misgender them or dead name them, which is maybe one of the most offensive parts about it, because I gave my child his name. And you're going to say if I call my child by the name I gave him, I am dead naming him, and then I can lose custody over him. And so that's an infringement on parental rights. There's also Section 3 of the bill talks about not recognizing out of state court decisions, which is a violation of Article 4, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the Full Faith and Credit Clause, which says states will recognize out of state decisions, court decisions. And so there's a lot of aspects of this that violates, and it violates, again, going back to First Amendment, my religious right. I'm a Christian, and I do not push this gender ideology stuff on my kids. And so if my kid is having these kind of, confusions or delusions, then as a Christian, I'm going to instill my Christian values and help my child the way I think they should be helped. And what you're saying is, if I do that, I can lose custody of them.
What are your thoughts on in Nazi Germany? This was a primary reason that they went and dismembered people, and especially the Jewish community, obviously. This is what they're doing to kids now, and they are pushing this. Why do you feel Democrats only care about kids outside of the womb that are gender confused? They're preying on them.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, on the same day that we voted on this bill, which was on a Sunday of all days, we actually voted on 3 other bills, and one of those bills was taxpayer-funded abortions, which passed, and the other bill was House Bill 1309, which says that all healthcare plans have to include gender-affirming care now. So you're going to start paying more for your healthcare premiums because we are now covering gender-affirming care. And the Republicans ran an amendment that said, okay, we don't agree with this, but how about this? How about we add an amendment that says this does not apply to children, to people under 18, and the Democrats killed that amendment. And what I got up and argued was, we keep hearing that you guys aren't doing hormone therapy and you aren't doing genital surgeries on kids or breast reductions on kids, but then you're passing a bill that says you have to cover those surgeries for children. Which is it? You're either not doing it or you are, and by that bill, you're saying that you are and needs to be covered in healthcare plans.
Well, and it seems like they keep speaking out of both sides of their mouth, meaning, they can go and make these decisions at this age, and there's a percentage rate that most kids develop out of that by the age of 13, out of gender dysphoria.
Right.
But they can't vote, they can't buy a firearm.
Right.
Where does it end?
Yeah, so, we actually, I appreciate that you mentioned that. So this year we passed a bill that says that you cannot buy ammunition unless you're 21 years of age. So we passed a bill a couple years ago that said you can't buy a gun until you're 21. Well, now they came back this year and said you can't buy ammunition unless you're at least 21. And so it's like, okay, we don't trust 20-year-olds to buy ammunition, but you're saying if my 5-year-old comes home and he's a biological boy and he says he's a girl, that I have to go along with it or I'm going to lose custody. So, I always make the reference that we live in Colorado. It might be 20 degrees out, and if I ask my kids, what do you want to wear to school today, they'll say basketball shorts and some Crocs. And so I don't even let them decide what clothes they're going to wear to school, but we're going to say that they can decide their gender for the rest of their life and potentially get surgery for it. I'm not okay with that. I don't think most people are.
Well, my last question would be, where does it end with the state infringing upon parental rights with this one introductory bill? But we don't co-parent with the government in many ways. So where do you see this? If this legislation passes, where do you see it going? I mean, as lemmings, essentially.
Right. So I think this right here is having an effect, because I think that we're going to kill House Bill 1312. I think the Democrats realize how much pushback this is getting and that it's getting national attention, and they're panicking, which is why they passed it almost 2 weeks ago on a Sunday again, and they still have not introduced it in the Senate yet. And I've heard rumblings behind the scenes of, well, this is why we haven't done it yet, and they're giving some legal excuses. No, they know that it has national attention. They know we're doing stuff like this right here, and they're terrified of it. And I'm hoping that this is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and that this is going to really tamp down some of this. Because if there's one thing politicians like, they like getting reelected. And if they think they'll lose their next election because of bills like this, they'll stop running these bills. And this is how we put the pressure on them.